614 Startups Nation, welcome back to another episode of the 614 Startups Podcast. My name is Elio Harmon, your host. Of course, I'm in my very favorite seat. Haven't been here for a while. I'm a little bit rusty, so please don't let that rust throw you off because I have a very, very good guest for you today. My man, Jeff with HDS or HealthPlan Data Solutions. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Elio. Great to be here and excited for our conversation.
All right. Yeah, man. You are a guy after my own heart. You're a marketer. We're going to talk about marketing, but I want to set the table because you also are part of a startup team building a very dynamic company. I'd love to hear more about HealthPlan Data Solutions. What problem are you solving? Who do you solve it for? And how do you solve it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I'll give you a little bit on HDS. So really at our core, we're a pharmacy analytics company. We've been around now for quite some time, a little bit over 10 years. And really what we represent is the culmination of a team of pharmacists coming together with a team of software engineers. Really the recognition that in the healthcare landscape, kind of more largely, data is king. And really being able to understand how that data is being used and how it drives spending decisions is really important, particularly as you go into pharmacy. So for our company, what we do is we really sit in that data position between plan sponsors or your health insurance companies, your self-funded employers, and their pharmacy benefit managers, the organizations that they hire to help manage their pharmacy benefit spend. So anytime their members go to a pharmacy and pick up prescription drugs. What we do is something that has actually existed on the medical side of healthcare for quite some time. And really just kind of pulling out that distinction on the medical side, this is when you're going to the hospital and you're getting a drug infused or a provider administered drug. Those are billed separately than when you go to like a regular retail pharmacy. So on the medical side, the way that this whole process works is there's this process from you have services, someone submits a bill to your insurance company, and then there's kind of a balancing where the insurance company checks with the provider, verifies what happened, and then once that whole verification process happens, then funds exchange. And the pharmacy side, that's all instantaneous. You go to the pharmacy, you adjudicate a prescription, the patient leaves with their drug, and at the end of your 2 weeks, the PBM sends an invoice to the insurance company and says, here's all of the bills that I've paid for your members over the last 2 weeks. There is really none of that checks and balances in real time beyond just the PBM coding the system. So what we found is there are organizations on the medical side that have been helping payers do that verification process for years. None of that really existed on the pharmacy side. And so our company, sitting between those insurers, those self-insured plans, and the PBM, we're creating that for the pharmacy side of the business. So what we do is we work with all of those insurance companies and plans to code all of their plan information into our system. And we check and make sure that when a patient goes to the pharmacy, the PBM is adjudicating everything how it's supposed to be. So it's a very complex business, but it's something modeled after medical payment integrity that's been around for quite some time that we're really on the forefront of bringing into the pharmacy side.
We're going to pull on them a little bit and we're going to unravel this thing for the lay people in the audience. All right. So the fact that it existed in one part of healthcare probably had a benefit that this part of healthcare that you work in weren't enjoying. So what's that benefit that not having your solution in place that pharmacies or the insurers or the middle person in this case are not enjoying? What are the benefits of using HealthPlan Data Solutions?
Yeah. So really at the end of the day, what it is there's a little, I guess the right way to describe this is when you're not watching basically every single claim like you do on the medical side, on the pharmacy side, you're kind of looking at a whole invoice at a time and then just paying a bill. When you have the ability to go in and look at all of the transactions that make up that number, you start to highlight whether there might be inconsistencies of was this adjudicated potentially at the wrong rate? Did this brand get classified as a generic or vice versa? And so there's a lot of, I would say, slippage between what the client actually should have paid based on what their contract says and what may happen in reality. Because at the end of the day, I think we process somewhere between 6 and 7 billion prescriptions a year. That's a lot of claims and a lot of different drugs across, on the employer side, we've got 20,000 companies that have over 500 employees. We've got 300 million insured people in the country. There's bound to be errors in that process. And before our company existed, no one was really checking at the claim level if there were ever any inconsistencies happening. You would just get an aggregate bill, and that was the end of the day. And so what we've really tried to do is bring that detailed claim level visibility to make sure that 100% of the prescriptions that are adjudicated happen the way that they're supposed to. Because even perfect organizations are only going to get it right 99% of the time. And when you work in the pharmacy industry, quickly you realize that 1% of a $500 billion industry is a very large number.
Yeah, I like that. So I think we're getting there, right? So the benefit is
Mm-hmm.
that pharmacies are batch billing the adjudicators. They're taking maybe all the claims for all the medications that they fill, and that's like one line item. What I'm hearing you say is, why don't we break out that line item and see if all of those the
Mm-hmm.
tax question is to itemize or not to
Yeah.
itemize, right? Let's
Yeah.
itemize this thing. Let's figure out what's all making up that final number that you're billing. Am I getting closer to the reality?
Yeah, you're really close. The only thing I would change there is the pharmacy benefit manager is accumulating all of those itemized transactions and giving them to the payer. The way that this works today is generally they'll do an audit at the end of the year. And so they'll look at every prescription or a sample of prescriptions 12 months from now and say, how did we do last year? The difference is we're going deeper than that, and we're doing it every 2 weeks. So our whole kind of mantra is, why would you want to wait a year to find out that something went wrong last week?
Okay, I got it now. So who's your customer? The insurer, the PDM, or the pharmacy? Who are
Yeah.
you helping in this situation?
Yeah, so our client base is the payer, so the health insurance companies. So we work with health plans, we work with government payers like Medicaid programs, and self-funded employers. So if you think of a large public company, or really a lot of companies over 500 employees, will choose to self-insure, which means that the company itself is paying for their employees' health care. So we would work on behalf of that payer.
Okay. Pretty niche industry, man. Tell me a little bit about the company, how it got started, and the founders.
So, as I said earlier, the company has been around for almost a decade now, and it's really a marrying of a group of pharmacists who used to work in the retail setting, dispensing prescriptions each day at retail independent pharmacies, and software engineers who had spent their kind of career building large ERP and enterprise-based systems. The two groups really coming together and saying, there's a lot of things that we're seeing as people working in pharmacies that just you know, PBMs get things wrong sometimes, or claims don't adjudicate the way they should, and it impacts my pharmacy. But at the end of the day, the health plans are the ones that are paying this. So there's something that's going on here, and kind of taking that kind of nuance that they were seeing in the pharmacy floor and talking with that problem to all the software engineers that are like, well, you have all the data. A lot of it's normalized. This is a solvable problem. How do we start to bring the two together? And so a little over 10 years ago, those two groups came together, started a company, and said, let's start using technology to start ingesting pharmacy data and looking at it in different ways and figuring out, can we actually start identifying some of these inconsistencies, some of these problems that the pharmacists were seeing every day, and find a way to bring that to market and really start to drive waste out of the system of healthcare from a pharmacy side. And that's really what started the initial kind of foray into what would pharmacy benefit payment integrity look like. That's really the industry we work in, is payment integrity. And that's the side of the industry on the medical side that's existed for a while. So the umbrella is called payment integrity.
All right. Well, let's dig into your day to day. What is the life, or what is the role of a VP of product and marketing? What does that entail working at HDS?
Yeah. So I think probably, I know you talk with a lot of startups and kind of people that work in smaller companies. Is in general, you wear a lot of hats and a lot of days are all unique. Really, from my role, there are two sides of the house that I work on. It's working with the organization to think about the products that we make and the customers that they serve, and developing the roadmap for how do we make them better, where do we take them, and how do we drive more value out of what we're doing, and do it more efficiently. So that's where I really serve as a connector across our organization. I work with our team of software engineers. I work with our pharmacy team. I work with our client facing team. And it's about bridging those together, making sure that we take all of our client feedback and find a way to continue to improve our products. So day to days look a lot like, planning, project management, kind of bringing the get together the kind of requirements for how we want to build a product, and then actually testing it and bringing it to fruition. On the
Yeah.
other side, on the marketing side, a lot of it is about storytelling, taking what do we do and crafting that into a message that accurately depicts how we provide value to our current clients, and how do we show the rest of the market the value that our company can offer them. I think that's one of the things that's really interesting too, kind of this dichotomy between an industry that exists on the medical side and one that's growing on the pharmacy side, is in a lot of cases, we're not necessarily trying to, win business from competitors. This is really a new space where you're trying to build a market. And so the kind of marketing journey, the storylines that you're trying to tell are a little bit different and a little bit more complicated when you're trying to explain and build a whole new market. So those are kind of the two areas where I spend most of my time, and they do connect, which is fun.
Yeah, when I Rev One connected us, so they're great friends of the show. I know you guys are, I believe, part of their studio, maybe even part of their portfolio. So that's awesome. And they were like, "Hey, you have to talk to this company. They're doing a lot of things right." And then I find out, oh, the person that they introduced me to is Jeff Baldetti, and you are a marketing guy. I'm like, okay, great. I get to talk to a marketing person, right? I'm usually talking to founders, and it's important to kind of understand as companies scale what these roles actually do. But you mentioned something I really wanted to dig into you, which is the importance of startups truly understanding who their customers are. So how did you guys figure that out at HDS?
Yeah, it's been a long process, and it's a really important question to answer, because you can create the best product in the world, and if you create it for the wrong person or the person that doesn't want it, you're never going to sell anything. And so a lot of it is about bridging that gap between what the product is and needs to be and the market need you're solving. And so a lot of what I've been involved with at the company, and what we've kind of strived to do, is from the current client base that we have, really starting to dig in and learn from them of like, explain to us the values that we're bringing to you beyond the financial stuff that we do. Help us understand where we're really making a difference here. Doing a lot of those interviews and really sitting with customers and sitting with our client facing teams has helped us on a lot more kind of crystallized way explain the more kind of nuanced value that we provide, especially as we're approaching kind of clients in a new market vertical for them. And what we've, I think, learned a lot is that our client base is not all the same. We're serving, health plans and government plans, as well as self-funded employers and pharmacy benefit consultants. And the way that they interact with us and the value that they drive from us is related but different. And so trying to have, one sales story or one kind of value prop for your product is not the right approach when you have customers that have different needs. And so that has been kind of a big process for us to learn over the last couple of years, is how to tell the story to kind of really hit on the value that we're providing that specific customer base. And really, I think, owning that they are different and seeing that we can provide value for different people in different ways.
Well, this is the unsexy part of business, right? The sexy part is like just selling a bunch of stuff and raising a bunch of capital, having an exit, flying all over the country in really nice business class or first class seats. But this is the unsexy part that you need to do before you get there. So let me ask you this. In talking to customers early on in HDS's journey, or maybe in your previous background, do you find that customers are forthcoming with the information that matters? Or is it about the quality of the questions you ask? Because you still haven't really figured that out yet, right? How do you really get to what matters in order to develop a product that can actually provide value to them?
I think you just hit on a super important nuance. And I think the quality of the questions that you ask is super important. And I think that for a lot of customers, they don't really think about all of the additional value until you prompt them. And then you hear a lot of either kind of additional confirmation, or they then kind of get prompted to think a lot more deeply about what you do for them and how that provides you value. So I think the quality of the questions is super important. Um, I think probably from my perspective, one of the things that is really hard to do is to navigate the transition from being a largely transactional business to one that has long-standing relationships with clients that are healthy and kind of grow over time. And so I think one of the things that we've kind of seen as an organization is we've kind of made a migration from doing a lot more transactional consulting based work where it's very clear if you have an SOW, you complete the SOW and you go forward, versus clients now where we're working with our platform of products where it's an ongoing relationship that evolves over time with the clients. Having that longer kind of relationship allows you to sit with clients and learn from them a lot more than when you're kind of more transactionally putting together a report and delivering it. And so I think that in general, the nature of those two kind of relationships has also kind of been key for us in understanding that better.
Okay, well, maybe this is putting you on the spot a bit, man. But like, give me like the characteristics of a good question, right? Like, what is it? Obviously, no yes or no stuff, right? Like, would you buy this? Yes, no. Do you think this is like a good idea? Yes, no. What are some of like? Give me an example of a question where you asked, maybe not specific to your company, if it's going to give away the secret sauce, but a question that was like, "Oh my goodness, this is really how you get people to talk about root cause and not just symptoms."
This episode is brought to you by Rev1. Rev1's mission is to help entrepreneurs build great companies. As you navigate the waters of business entrepreneurship, you don't have to go it alone. A strategic partnership with Rev1 connects innovators to the talent, customers, space, and funding you need when you need it. Get started with Rev1 Startup Studio by visiting rev1ventures.com to learn more. Again, the website is rev1ventures.com. Support for the 614 Startups podcast comes from Nationwide. Nationwide's mission is to protect people, businesses, and futures with extraordinary care. To help fulfill that mission, Nationwide is looking to invest its $350 million venture capital investment fund in insurtechs that will help them create new and exciting products and solutions to meet the needs of their customers. If you're interested in partnering with Nationwide's venture capital team, visit nationwideventures.com to learn more. Again, the website is nationwideventures.com. Nationwide is on your side. This episode is brought to you by KJK. Tired of the billable hour? KJK has a solution. The KJK GC Advantage program offers businesses comprehensive legal services in the areas of employment, corporate services, real estate, trademark, intellectual property, and estate planning, all for a set monthly fee. KJK serves as their clients' partners in business, not just their lawyers. Along with cost certainty and predictability, the KJK GC Advantage program gives clients peace of mind, knowing their projects will be handled quickly and efficiently, maximizing the return on investment on their legal spend. So don't go it alone. Let KJK help. Learn more by visiting kjk.com.
614 Startups Nation, we're back. I know you guys are on the edge of your seats. You got to hear what Jeff has to say about what a great question might be. So, Jeff, throwing it back to you. What's an example of a good customer question?
Yeah. Well, so probably one of the best ones that we asked recently is we were kind of doing a business review with a client, and we sat down and said, we've talked through kind of what our system has showed you all and kind of what we think is valuable and kind of making sure that we're getting that in front of the client the right way. But when we turned it back to them and said, help walk us through, what do you do with this information? How does this provide you with value, and what are you using it for? Because we know that this is a piece of some other vendors you're working with or other problems that you're trying to tackle. And when we pushed it back to their team for them to kind of take the lead and explain, well, here's how we use these certain KPIs or this type of information that you've uncovered, it actually, for us, unlocked a value that they placed on our system that had nothing to do with financial recovery or cost avoidance or the normal things that we would talk about. It actually kind of shed the light on the idea that, there are certain things that are in our system that are really helping them from a regulatory compliance perspective. This is something that we're required to do by, state law for certain lines of business. And this is how we work with your platform to actually help us do that. And it unlocked from my side, on kind of the marketing side, of like, this is a whole other area of our product that is valuable to other plans that we don't really talk about as much as we could, because it's harder to draw that kind of tangible financial value when you're not talking about, hey, I recovered $200,000 by fixing this error, rather than, hey, this helped me comply with a specific requirement that I have to do. And because I can work with you, I didn't have to task 3 FTEs internally to pull the reporting, to do it separately, and to submit everything. So I think that was an area where we learned a totally different value we were providing that was something that we hadn't thought of before, and now are able to think through, how do we verbalize that through marketing.
Okay. Well, I mean, listen, I love that because in startups, if everything was straightforward, it wouldn't be that innovative, right? And so asking questions where the customer's revealing something to you that feels like a curveball, right? It came out of nowhere, is really where innovation happens. All right. So in addition to getting to know their customer, and all the information that the customer gives you in that process, how do you then take all of that and then develop a compelling value proposition? Because in that customer conversation is very much discovery. You're going to go back, take what they said to you, and then come back to them. What's the process of developing that compelling value proposition?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is kind of, one, having multiple sets of ears at the table with clients and putting yourself in the position to hear that information and then bringing it back internally. And I think, like most marketing, it's a process of iteration, of trying to understand, what is the right kind of combination of what we've heard from this client and others, as well as kind of what we're seeing from market trends. How do we kind of pull those stories together to talk about, who this is for, what's the value that they're pulling out of it, what are they going to have after they work with us? Like, thinking through, I mean, almost going back to like business school training, when you sit and listen to a textbook of like, this is how you write a value prop. There are elements where you kind of sit down and say, all right, do we actually understand like who this is for? And is it the same for everyone, or is it different? And then, when we talk about, what are those values, you can go through and list off all the adjectives that you've heard, or, the tangible pieces of value. It's about kind of going through that process a lot of times. And it seems kind of cliche to go through the process, but it actually does kind of leave you with, one, a pretty clear understanding of what your value prop is, but two, internal alignment. Like, that's a huge thing in, I think, startups, making sure that every team understands who we sell to and why we sell to them, helps kind of pull together product development and kind of the client facing teams. Because the last thing that you want at a startup is for people to be rowing in different directions. That's how you end up rowing in the circle.
Yeah, and so there's a difference between what we do and the value prop, right? Like the actual way you say it that turns on the light bulb for the customer. That comes with a lot of iteration, that comes with a lot of hard work. And you work on a diverse team, so you have pharmacists, you have engineers, and then you have business people, and you're talking to a lot of different audiences. How do you account for a value proposition that elegantly resonates with all of those stakeholders? Because at the end of it, you're going to sell different to different people, but at the core of the problem that you're solving and the way you solve it, how do you arrive at an elegant statement that explains exactly what your value is to this organization and gets buy-in across the organization?
Well, I think first off, it is a Venn diagram of each one of those stakeholders brings a nuance to their own view of what the value of the product or your offering is. And it's finding that central area between the three groups, between how the product engineers look at the product versus a pharmacist versus the business leaders that are kind of making the decisions about the company at large. A lot of that is kind of bringing all those groups together so that they can hear each one of their kind of diverse perspectives, so that you eventually kind of come to an agreement in the middle between the three, what we really think the value prop is. And it ends up being a mixture of both, because I mean, frankly, you can't have a strong and succinct value prop that really is true unless you're getting input from all those pieces. You have to understand fundamentally how the product works to understand what value might be driven from it. You can't really think through value if you're not thinking about the business implications of what you can do. And then from our standpoint, being a company in the pharmacy industry and healthcare more broadly, there's always a clinical component of what you do when you work in this area. And so understanding how to match the business implications with the clinical implications with the tactical of what the product actually does is how you get to that middle point.
Yeah, and I think that what that brings me to is now a healthy relationship between marketing and sales, because sales oftentimes is right having most of those
Yes.
conversations and constantly gathering more information from the customer. So, with you on the marketing side and your counterpart on the sales side, how are you guys creating a healthy relationship so that you can effectively gather information, iterate on your value proposition, and collaborate in a way that's productive?
Yeah, that is a great point. And having, and as I was talking earlier, making sure that everyone's rowing in the right direction is so important. And that can probably not be any more important than connecting how you sell the product with how the product actually works and provides value. And so one of the things that we have been very focused on is on the sales side, bringing in experienced sales individuals who have sat in the customer's chair before, who have been part of that buying decision with our client base and are able to bring that perspective into how our message more externally is received. That's helped make that message stronger. But the counterpoint to that is being able to then work with those salespeople to truly get them into our product system, to make them product experts so that they understand all the nuances to how our product helps our clients. That helps them be able to speak kind of within the right frame of mind of really what we're doing and telling that story and matching it with their kind of expertise from prior lives and prior jobs of knowing the challenges that our customer base faces when they sit in the chair. Having those two pieces come together helps you tell a much more succinct, believable, and value-driven story, and has been kind of really critical for us.
What I really think about though is as you go into the market, let's say sales and marketing are humming, right? You guys are constantly communicating. There's not a blame game happening. Hey, marketing, your leads are terrible. Sales, you're not selling the lead. You're not using my value propositions, right? That kind of relationship is not what you have, but you guys are humming right along. But it's great to have a plan. But then you go into the market, and like Mike Tyson said, I think this quote is attributable to him. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? When you go to market with your value proposition and that salesperson is actually sitting across from them using your slide deck in their presentation, and they're like, what is this guy even talking about, right? And it's not really resonating. When you've gone to the market as you iterated through this process, what are some of the lessons learned? Because you can be in the lab for forever, but at some point you got to go to the market. So what are some of the lessons you learned as you went out with these value propositions and tested them against real market dynamics?
Yeah, I think one of the things in general is just being open to feedback. Like the sales team is your window into your future client pipeline. And if your message isn't resonating with them, rather than the first move being to think that, well, this isn't the right client for us, understand why the message is resonating with them and trying to understand where they're coming from helps you understand whether you're telling the right message or explaining your product in the right way. And so I think being able to listen and take an iterative approach is extremely important, because there are definitely times where we've had, calls that don't go well. And what we'll do is sit down and talk about, okay, well, why did this go well? Was it the message that didn't resonate? Did we not properly understand, the client and their needs? And did we make maybe poor assumptions? Like, it goes back to that whole idea of understanding the customer persona of, a health plan may view the value differently than a self-funded employer group versus a government. And we may go in with some of those assumptions, but there's always nuances even within those subsets. Really understanding when messages don't resonate helps you make it better. And then understanding at the same time where you have messages that continually resonate really well, trying to ask, well, why is this resonating? That helps you strengthen it even further as well, because you start to uncover, potential, nuances beyond kind of maybe a broader point that you thought already resonated. So, I mean, there's a lot of pieces, but in general, I think, taking feedback and listening is kind of critical to that whole process.
How do you stay fundamentally sound though? Because one of the things that happens when you start scaling is the fundamentals start to break down, right? You're focused on like, should we be making TikTok videos? Or like, should we be investing more in Google AdWords? And then you forget to talk to the customer, right? I think this is where a lot of companies lose touch. The brands that are iconic, the people that have just absolute rabid fan bases around their products don't ever lose this, no matter how big they get. And for the ones who ever do, it is the downfall of their company. How do you, as a VP, as you guys hit these big milestones down the road, how do you intend to keep your team and the sales team disciplined to never take your eye off the customer?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, as you work at a startup, you get pulled in a lot of different directions. And there's a lot of things that you kind of see, and you can, to, I think the point you're making, you can run in a lot of different directions if you want to. And, I think one of the things that actually might be a benefit of, having the purview to sit over product and marketing is one side and one aspect of my job is heavily process driven and heavily project management driven. And taking that approach to how we think about marketing is something that I try and do every day. And so from my perspective, it's about trying to make sure that we continually, walk rather than run ahead of our skis is really important. And I will say there's maybe an implicit benefit of the fact that for a lot of things, healthcare kind of runs behind in a lot of other industries. So there's a lot less, I would say, push for social media beyond maybe LinkedIn. A lot of kind of marketing, kind of most of healthcare still sits in that kind of publication, kind of print media or digital media, conferences. So there's still a lot that is much different than how like a direct to consumer business would work. But you make a really good point of it's super easy to get excited about where you can go and the stories that you can tell. And I think being honest with your company and the status that you're at right now is super important. And having a team around you that tells you when you're getting over your skis is not a bad idea either.
Yeah. Don't pop the champagne too early, man. Stay focused, stay down with the fundamentals. All right. So great conversation, Jeff. I appreciate you lending all your experience and expertise to us. But I want to know what's happening with HDS, man. So what's next for you? What are the milestones? What are the things out there that you guys have cooking that the community needs to hear about?
Yeah, so no, we're really excited about the next kind of 18 months here. We've spent a lot of time laying kind of foundational groundwork on building a team that we think really is industry leading and really starting to sit and understand our product offering and how we go to market. And we've started to see some really good traction in several of our product lines. And we're really excited for the next year to start taking the value we're providing to those clients and be able to start telling the stories we want to with it. When we're working with clients over longer periods of time, you have to wait to go through some of those, a year of experience before you can actually spend the time to write the case study and really show in dollars and cents what the value was. So we're really excited that we're getting close to that point with a couple of clients so that we can start telling that story and getting the rest of the market excited about the value in this new market that we've created has. So, I'm really excited that we've got the whole organization rowing in the right direction. I think we got a lot of great stuff coming.
Yeah, man. So if I am part of the, I guess, HR team for self-insured company, right? And I'm like, man, some of these invoices, I'm not sure what's in there, right? Or I'm at a health plan right now. I'm like, yeah, the status quo isn't quite working. How do folks get a hold of HDS if they're interested in learning more about your services? Or if they say to themselves, this is a pretty cool company to work for, where do they go to find you and get a hold of your company?
Yeah, so you can get us on our website at hds-rx.com, as well as on our social media with LinkedIn. There's a lot of information on both of those about our products and what we do and who we serve. And then there's a ability to contact our business development team, our marketing team directly from the website and schedule more in-depth calls for either product demos or to learn more about what we do. And then you'll get to talk with me or the other great folks here at HDS.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, check out HDS. If you have any service needs or you want to go get a hold of Jeff, maybe you could, talk to people about if they have deeper questions about some of the ways that they could continue to have great conversations with their customer. I always end the podcast with my one takeaway. My one takeaway today is just like any relationship in life, don't ever stop communicating. If you want a great relationship in life, you have to keep the lines of communication open. And if you want a customer for life, you need to keep the lines of communication open and continue to iterate. All right, folks, that's it for another episode of the 614 Startups podcast. You can find us on all the top streaming platforms and, of course, on YouTube. Hope you hit that subscribe button. Until next time, peace.
That's a wrap, folks. You can find this and all our episodes on our website, 614startups.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and all your favorite podcasting platforms. Don't forget to subscribe and write a review. If you'd like updates sent directly to your inbox, you can sign up for our weekly newsletter on the website. To engage in the 614 Startups community, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 614 Startups on all platforms and join the conversation. For sponsorship opportunities and collaborations, email us at info@614startups.com.